So the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita is divided into three sections. The first section deals with Prakriti, which is represented by the analogy in the 15th chapter of the upside down peepal tree. The second section of the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita deals with the individual soul and its journey from one body to another. That was covered last time. Today we want to cover the section that deals, the third section and final section, that deals with the Paramatma. The concept of Paramatma has already been introduced in the Vedas. You have the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, and in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, already the concept has been introduced of what is known as the Antaryamin. In 3.7 of the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, it is mentioned that the Antaryamin that governs everything is lying within you. And this is taught by sage Yajnavalkya in the third 3.7.1 to 3.7.23. And here Yajnavalkya defines the Antaryamin as the seer of sight, hearer of hearing, thinker of thinking, the imperishable who controls all the entities, including the earth, the sun, the sky, and the breath. Also, the inner ruler is described as being distinct from the individual limited soul. Realizing this inner divine ruler removes fear and duality, leading to knowledge that this Antaryamin is the Antaryamin of all beings. Further, we have in two Upanishads the similar or same verses. That's in the Mundaka Upanishad 3.1.1 and the Shvetashvatara Upanishad 4.6. It talks about two birds seated in the same tree. One bird represents the individual soul, which eats the fruits, finding some sweet, some bitter, and some tasteless. And the Supreme Soul is the second bird seated on the branch beside it, simply witnessing everything. And it explains that these two birds are inseparable friends, Sayuja Sakhaya, seated on the same tree, Samanam Vriksham. One bird is the Jivatma and the other is the Paramatma. The tree represents the Kshetra, or the phenomenal world and the Prakriti granted to it. And when the individual bird, individual soul, stops seeking the fruits of the tree and turns to witness the other, the Paramatma, it becomes free from sorrow. So all this has been explained earlier in the scriptures and the Upanishads. But the clarity of understanding, the definition of how it is different from the individual soul, how the Paramatma is different from the individual soul, all this is discussed for the first time in the Bhagavad-Gita in the 15th chapter. In the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita, 13.23, Krishna speaks of that Paramatma. He says, Upadrashta anumantascha bharta bhokta maheshwara Paramatmeti chapyokto dehesmin purushapara. Within the body resides the Supreme Lord, He is said to be the witness. He is the permitter, the supporter, the transcendental enjoyer, the ultimate controller, and he is the Paramatma. It's very important to understand that Bhagavan is a permitter, the supporter, the transcendental enjoyer, and the ultimate controller when he takes the aspect of Paramatma and is seated within your heart. So, the individual soul is different from this Paramatma discussed in 13.23. And this difference is now brought out in the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita. So first, when Krishna begins the aspect of Paramatma, he begins by explaining that all the fire, all the illumination, both cosmic as well as internal, occurs because of Bhagavan and Paramatma. In 15.12, Krishna says, Yad aditya gatam tejo jagad bhasyate akhilam yat chandramasi yat chagnau tat tejo vidhi mamakam. The splendor of the sun which dissipates the darkness of this whole world comes from me. And the splendor of the moon and the splendor of the fire, all of them, Krishna says, come from me. He also explains how cosmically enters into every planet and maintains their orbit. Gam avishya cha bhutani dharyami aham ojasa pushnami chaushadi sarvaha somo bhutva rasatmakah. So I enter into every planet and by my energy they stay in orbit. I become the moon and I enable all sources of life, all vegetables, to draw in the juice of life. He also explains that just like he provides heat to the universe cosmically, he also provides the fire of digestion. Aham Vaishvanaro Bhutva Praninam Deha Ashrita Pranapana Samayukta Pachamya Annam Chaturvidham. Not only is he the fire of the sun and the moon and the heat of the fire, but he is the fire of digestion. He is the air of life, outgoing and incoming. And he digests all the four kinds of foodstuffs. Four kinds of foodstuffs meaning those that are swallowed, those that are chewed, those that are licked up, and those that are sucked up. These are the four. And now he explains that he is situated within the heart. Sarvasya chaham hridi sanavishto matasmritir jnanam apohanam cha vedascha sarvairaham eva vedyo vedanta krid veda videva chaham. And Krishna declares, I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me comes knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas, I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of the Vedas, and I am the knower of the Vedas. So here he begins to explain that he is situated within the heart. Now we come to this section of the 15th chapter, where very clearly Krishna explains how the individual soul remains the individual soul and the individual soul does not become God. There are a lot of philosophies and people going around spouting erroneous conclusions of the Bhagavad-Gita. And they're going around saying that, oh, you are the Jivatma, yes, but ultimately you will become the Paramatma. Now, please pay close attention because in these verses, Krishna explains that even if you become a realized soul, even if you realize your spiritual identity, even if you know that you are free from the cycle of birth and death, even if you have attained Jivan Mukti, and even should you attain Videha Mukti, even if you are liberated while you are in this body, or you are liberated when you leave this body, even then you will not become God. This is very clear in these verses. So listen carefully. Dva imau purushau loke ksharas aksharas evacha ksharas sarvani bhutani kutasto akshara uchyate. Now please pay close attention to the translation I am giving, because too many people have given a wrong, erroneous translation. What is Krishna saying here in the 16th verse? He is saying that there are two types of living entities. Those that are mortal, therefore they are ksharas. Mortal means they are subject to birth and death, that they move from one body to another, one gross body to another gross body. That is already explained in the second section of the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad-Geeta. So most people are subject to birth and death because they are mortal. They leave one gross body and carrying the subtle body, they move into another gross body. So that is most of living entities. Kshara sarvani bhutani. Most living entities are kshara, they are mortal, subject to birth and death. And the last part, which says, Kutasto akshara uchyate. Now understand clearly what this word, this section means. Because once you understand what Kutasto akshara uchyate means, you will no longer be in doubt. What is a Kutasto? Kutasto means one who is like the blacksmith's anvil. What does the blacksmith do? He fashions metal. He may fashion metal into a sword, into a plow, into a knife. So how does he fashion metal or iron into different shapes? He puts the iron into fire, and having put it into fire, he makes the metal molten. He makes it soft. And taking that softened metal, which is molten by the heat, he puts it on a stone which is called the anvil. And then he bashes that metal, or he bashes that iron into the shape of the sword or the plow or the knife or whatever. So what does that stone have to endure? It has to endure the molten metal. It has to endure the molten iron. Intense heat of almost softened, near liquid iron. It also endures the blows of the blacksmith's hammer. So it endures great force, it endures great heat. But what happens to the anvil? It is stone. It endures all that and does not change. So when an individual becomes like that, he is said to be kutasto. And what do we mean by human beings becoming kutasto? Sukheshu, dukheshu anudvignamana, sukheshu vigataspriha, vita raga bhaya krodha stitidi muni uchyate. He is not depressed when there is cause for sorrow. He is not excited when there is cause for joy. He is free from attachment, fear, and anger. Such is the sage of steady wisdom. जीतात्मना प्रशांतस्य परमात्मा समहितः शीतोष्णा सुख दुखेषु तथा मान अपमानयो. For one who has conquered his mind, for him God is already reached. For him heat and cold, joy and sorrow, honor and dishonor, they're all the same. Prakasham cha pravrittim cha mohameva cha pandava na dveshyati sampravritani na nivritani kankshati. In his prakriti, sometimes sattva will manifest, sometimes rajoguna will manifest, sometimes tamaguna will manifest. But the individual who has become gunatita, he endures all of this without experiencing any change. He does not hate one guna when it is present. He does not desire another guna when it is not present. He is able to endure heat, cold, joy, sorrow, honor, dishonor. That is the Kutasto. He is Kutasto because he knows he is not Prakriti. He is Kutasto because he knows that he is the individual soul. He knows he is the Kshetrajna. He knows that he is the Jivatma. He knows he is the individual fragmented Purusha. And he is not Prakriti. Therefore, he endures whatever is happening to Prakriti. He is watching it unagitated. Much like somebody who watches on a movie screen. He watches everything, sorrow, joy, violence, and he remains as an observer from the seat of the movie theater. But he is completely unaffected. So that is the nature of a person who has realized that he is the soul. And because he has realized he is the soul and he is not the Prakriti, when the time comes for him to move on from this gross body, he leaves the gross body in fixed remembrance of God. And as he leaves this body, the subtle components of his Prakriti, which include Mano Buddhir Ahankar, they go to the Mahat, to the totality of the Prakriti subtle nature. Similarly, his earth goes to earth, water goes to water, fire goes to fire, air goes to air, ether goes to ether. And the individual soul becomes completely situated in its own glory. And being situated in its own glory, this individual soul engaging in parabhakti returns to God. So Krishna explains here that there are two types of living entities. Those who have not realized their spiritual identity and thus are subject to birth and death. And then there are those who have realized their spiritual identity. And such entities are immortal because they have attained their spiritual realization of their original spiritual identity. And having explained that there is a mortal and immortal nature of the individual soul, now Krishna explains that the Paramatma is distinct and separate from them. In 15.17, Bhagavan explains, Uttama Purushastva Anya Paramatmeti Udaritah Yo Loko Trayam Avishya Bhibartya Avyaya Ishwarah. Besides the mortal and the immortal souls, the mortal who have not realized their spiritual identity, who are attached to Prakriti and thus They journey from one gross body to another, carrying their subtle body with them. And the other is the immortal soul, one who has realized his spiritual identity. But apart from these two, the Supreme Person, Uttama Purusha, Bhagavan, Tva Anya, and he, when he enters into the heart of the individual soul, he is called Paramatmeti Udaritah. Besides these two, the mortal and immortal, there is the Lord Himself who has entered into these worlds and is maintaining them. And who is that soul? Go back to 13.23. And he says, Upadrashta anumantascha bharta bhokta maheshwara Paramatmeti chapyukto dehesmin purushaparah. This Lord, who is apart from the mortal and immortal souls, he is the witness, the permitter, the supporter, the transcendental enjoyer, the ultimate controller. He is the Paramatma. And this is further clarified in 15.18. Yasmat sharam atitoham aksharad api cha uttamah. This is so important, this line. He says, thus I am transcendental beyond both the mortal and the immortal. Yasmat sharam atito aham. I am beyond the mortal souls. Aksharad api chottamaha. I am beyond the immortal souls. I am the greatest. Atosmi loke vede cha pratita purushottamaha. And being beyond both the mortal and the immortal souls, I am the greatest. I am celebrated in both this world and in the Vedas as that supreme person. And the realization of this Paramatma who is seated within your heart is the highest form of realization. Because once you realize that this Paramatma is within your heart, you engage yourself fully in worshipping Him at all times. In 15.19, Krishna says, Yo mam evam asamudho janati purushottamam sa sarva vidbhajati mam sarva bhavena bharata. And whoever knows that I am that Supreme Lord without any doubt, he is understood to be the knower of everything, and therefore he engages himself constantly and fully in devotional service, O son of Bharata. And he goes on to say, Iti guyatamam shastram idam uktam mayanagah etad budva buddhiman syat krita kritas cha bharata. This is the most confidential part of the Vedic scriptures. And it is now disclosed by me. Whoever understands this will become wise, and all his efforts, his endeavors within the world will lead to perfection. So it's very important to understand that there is confidential knowledge, more confidential knowledge, and most confidential knowledge. Confidential knowledge is that you are the individual soul. More confidential knowledge is knowing that there is Bhagavan, there is God, there is the Supreme. And the most confidential knowledge is that you realize that it is through bhakti you can know Him as He is. When He's seated in your heart, and you know that he is there as Bhagavan, you will constantly be engaged in his worship. You will engage constantly in parabhakti, which leads you to him. Bhaktya mam abhijanati yavanyashchashmi tatvatah tato mam tatvato gnatva vishate tadanantaram. It is only through devotion you shall know me as I am. And through devotion you shall enter into my being from where there is no return. All other methods ultimately lead to parabhakti. Naham veder na tapasa na danena na chaijaya. Bhaktyatva ananya shakya aham evam vido Arjuna. Not through study of the scriptures, naham veder. Na tapasa, not through austerity. Na danena, not by giving in charity. Na cha ijjaya, not by performing ritualistic worship. Bhaktyatva ananya shakya. It is only by undeviating devotion to me that you shall know me as I am. That is the most confidential knowledge, which is being revealed here in text 20 of the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad-Geeta. So for the first time in the Indian scriptures, you have clarity on what is Paramatma, and you know that Paramatma is very different from even the realized soul. It is very popular in Indian culture. Somehow this has crept in, where we call gurus Bhagwan. We call elevated sadhus as Bhagavan. But it's very clearly demonstrated here in the Bhagavad Gita that even that individual soul, that guru, that great sadhu who has realized his spiritual identity is not, is not really on the same platform as the Paramatma as really Bhagavan is. Because Bhagavan and Paramatma are on a different platform altogether. They are beyond the mortal soul and they're beyond the immortal self-realized soul as well. Please make note of this. And this is supported by the Bhagavad Gita in these verses. So with this, we conclude the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And if you have any queries or questions, I'll be happy to take them. Yes? I think we don't have a moderator today. All right, so we'll conclude today's session, which concludes the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. In the next session, we shall cover the 16th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Jai Shri Krishna, Hare Om.